You are sitting shoulder to shoulder with your kin in the flickering, dying light of a hearth fire. The year is roughly 25,000 BC. The location is a limestone overhang somewhere in the frigid, wind-scoured steppes of what will one day be called Eurasia. Outside the cave, the temperature is plunging toward a lethal freeze. The wind howls, carrying the distant, guttural coughing of cave lions. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of wood smoke, rendered animal fat, and unwashed human bodies. You are safe for now, wrapped in the collective warmth of the 40 people who make up your entire known universe. But then the atmosphere shifts. The danger does not come from the darkness outside. It comes from the man sitting across the fire. He is a skilled hunter, but tonight he has made a fatal error. He is boasting. He is speaking too loudly, claiming sole credit for the mammoth kill, demanding a larger share of the marrow, and elevating himself above the elders. He is violating the unspoken sacred laws of absolute egalitarianism that keep your fragile band from tearing itself apart. Watch what happens to your body in this exact moment. You do not reach for your spear. You do not shout. Instead, a sudden, icy prickle erupts at the base of your neck. Your stomach churns, knotting into a tight, acidic fist. A flush of heat rises into your cheeks. You avert your eyes, suddenly fascinated by the dirt between your feet. You pull your knees closer to your chest, physically shrinking your footprint in the cave. You feel a profound, paralyzing discomfort. You are experiencing a visceral, full-body rejection of his behavior. You are feeling cringe. This is not a modern internet phenomenon. It is not a trivial artifact of digital culture or a modern teenage anxiety. This is a story about a microscopic, neurochemical war humanity has fought blindly for millennia. It is a biological alarm system, forged in the brutal crucible of the Pleistocene era, designed to prevent the total annihilation of your species. Cringe is not a weakness. It is a violent survival instinct. To understand why ancient humans felt this exact, agonizing sensation, you must strip away the illusions of modern safety and face the primal baseline of our existence. For 95% of human history, we were nomadic hunter-gatherers roaming a hyper-lethal planet. The mathematics of prehistoric survival were unforgiving. A single human being isolated on the Pleistocene steppe is biologically pathetic. We do not have the claws of the cave bear. We do not have the speed of the dire wolf. We do not have the insulated hide of the woolly rhinoceros. We are slow, naked, fragile apes who require a constant, massive intake of calories just to fuel the dense, energy-hungry fat in our skulls. In that brutal environment, the only weapon humanity possessed was the tribe. The group is your armor. The group is your immune system. The group is the only reason you do not freeze to death in the dark. In a band of 50 to 150 individuals, every single member is a load-bearing pillar in the architecture of survival. Because of this, absolute social cohesion was not a philosophical ideal. It was a matter of immediate biological life and death. If the group splinters, everyone dies. If a physical fight breaks out over meat, hunters get injured, infection sets in, and the group starves. Therefore, evolution had to design a mechanism to prevent conflict before it escalated into violence. It had to create an invisible, electric fence around acceptable behavior. It created social pain. Look inside the architecture of the human brain, specifically at a region called the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. This is the neurological hub where the mammalian brain registers the agonizing, sharp distress of physical injury. If you fall and snap your femur, this region of the brain lights up in a blinding neurochemical storm, screaming at you to stop walking, to protect the limb, to seek help. But millions of years ago, as our ancestors became hypersocial primates, evolution performed a ruthless act of biological recycling. Instead of building a new neural pathway for social regulation, evolution simply wired the threat of social rejection directly into the physical pain center. When you violate a social norm, or when you watch someone else violate a social norm, your brain processes it using the exact same neural circuitry that it uses to process a broken bone. Social rejection literally, physically hurts. And it has to. If being ostracized from the tribe only made you feel mildly disappointed, you would not fight desperately to regain your social standing. In the Paleolithic world, being expelled from the cave meant you would be dead within a week. You would starve, freeze, or be eaten. Therefore, the threat of social exile had to trigger a fear response as agonizing as the jaws of a predator. Cringe is the early warning system. It is the pre-shock of social death. But why do we cringe at others? Why does your stomach turn when that hunter across the fire boasts too loudly? Because in a small, interdependent band, another person's social failure is a direct threat to your survival. If he angers the group destabilizes. Furthermore, if you are associated with him, his social taint might spread to you. Your brain induces a state of secondary embarrassment to force you to physically distance yourself from the deviant. It is an immune response. Your body is quarantining the social pathogen. This invisible, agonizing force shaped every human culture on Earth. We see the exact same survival mechanism manifesting through convergent evolution across wildly different environments. Travel from the freezing caves of Ice Age Europe to the scorching, arid expanse of the Kalahari Desert. Here, the hoansi, part of the Sand People, have survived for tens of thousands of years in one of the most unforgiving environments on the planet. To survive the Kalahari, they rely on a practice anthropologists call insulting the meat. When a hoansi hunter tracks and kills a massive eland, bringing a massive influx of life-saving protein to the camp, he does not swagger into the village. He does not boast. Instead, he sits at the edge of the camp, looking utterly despondent. When asked about his hunt, he will lie. He will say he caught nothing of value, perhaps just a skinny, sickly animal barely worth their time. When the tribe retrieves the meat, they will look at this massive, beautiful carcass, and they will ruthlessly mock the hunter. They will tell him the meat is tough. They will say it is barely enough to feed a dog. They will complain about his incompetence. And the hunter is expected to agree, to shrink away in deep performative embarrassment. Why do they do this? Because the hoansi know that if a successful hunter begins to feel superior, he will become arrogant. Arrogance leads to hierarchy. Hierarchy leads to tyranny, and tyranny destroys the sharing network that keeps the entire tribe alive during droughts. They weaponize embarrassment. They use collective cringe as a scalpel to excise human ego before it can rot the social fabric. You see the exact same biological hardware operating in the deep freeze of the Arctic. Among the traditional Inuit communities, surviving the long, brutal months of total winter darkness requires perfect harmony in confined spaces. Cabin fever is a lethal threat. If two men develop a bitter dispute over a tool or an insult, they cannot afford a physical fight. A broken hand means a man cannot hunt seals, meaning his family starves. So, instead of violence, they engage in a song duel. The two rivals stand before the entire gathered community and sing highly complex, deeply insulting, satirical songs about each other. The goal is to make the audience laugh. The man who receives the most laughter wins. Think about the loser of that duel. Think about the crushing, suffocating weight of an entire community laughing at your flaws, your failures, your very existence. The loser experiences a level of cringe so biologically overwhelming that they often flee the settlement for days, wandering the ice in deep shame until the neurochemical storm in their brain subsides. The social order is restored without a single drop of blood being spilled. The weapon was humiliation. Same biology, same muscle fibers, same genetic code. Ancient humans were not primitive, unfeeling brutes grunting in the darkness. They were hypersensitive, emotionally intelligent survivors, finely tuned to the microscopic shifts in facial expressions, vocal tones, and body language. They evolved blushing, a physiological trait completely unique to the human species. No other animal blushes. Why do we? Because evolution needed an involuntary, unfakeable biological signal to prove to the tribe that we recognize we have violated a norm. When you mess up, the capillaries in your face dilate, flooding your cheeks with blood. You are flying a bright red flag of surrender. You are telling the tribe, I feel the shame. Do not kill me. Do not cast me out. But the relentlessly adaptable human species soon faced a crisis. The very biological system that kept us alive in the Pleistocene was about to be hijacked. The paradigm shift occurred roughly 12,000 years ago. The glaciers retreated, the climate warmed. Humanity discovered how to manipulate the seeds of wild grasses. We invented agriculture, and in doing so, we ruined everything. The agricultural revolution fundamentally broke the mathematical laws of human social evolution. For 300,000 years, your brain was optimized to track the reputations, grudges, and social standing of exactly 150 people. Suddenly, because of the massive calorie surplus provided by wheat and barley, humans found themselves living in Çatalhöyük, in Uruk, in Memphis. We were living in cities of 5,000, then 50,000, then 1,000,000 people. You are no longer surrounded by your lifelong kin. You are surrounded by strangers. The stakes of social interaction mutated into something terrifying. In a hunter-gatherer band, if you did something deeply cringe-inducing, you might be mocked for a week, but the tribe still needed you to forage. In a massive agrarian city, you are expendable. If you violate the norms, you aren't just mocked, you are destroyed. The visceral biological fear of social rejection was weaponized by the new elites. Cringe evolved into formal etiquette, rigid class structures, and honor cultures. In these new, massive societies, human value was no longer based on how well you could track a mammoth. It was based on your reputation, your lineage, and your adherence to bizarre, arbitrary social rules designed to separate the nobility from the peasants. To use the wrong fork, to wear the wrong color of dye, to speak out of turn to a magistrate, these were no longer just minor social missteps. They were catastrophic failures. The biological alarm system in your brain, designed to warn you about being eaten by wolves, was now firing off because you bowed at the wrong angle to a Sumerian tax collector. Every solution creates a new problem. We solved the problem of starvation with farming, and in return, we created a world of constant, low-level, paralyzing social anxiety. The ancient world was utterly ruthless toward those who induced cringe in the collective. To see the physical evidence of this, you only need to dig into the soil of ancient Athens, around the 5th century BC. You are standing in the agora, the beating heart of the world's first democracy. But this is not a day of celebration. This is the ostracophoria. Once a year, the citizens of Athens are given a piece of broken pottery, an ostracon. On this shard of baked clay, you are asked to scratch the name of any man in the city. You are not voting for a criminal. You are not voting for a murderer. You are voting for the man who is simply too annoying, too arrogant, or too weird. The man who makes the collective city cringe. If 6,000 citizens write the same name, that man is stripped of his social standing and exiled from Athens for 10 years. Look at the shards pulled from the earth by modern archaeologists. Thousands of them bear the name of Aristides, a prominent statesman. Historical accounts tell us that Aristides was famously honorable, so much so that he was given the nickname Aristides the Just. Why was he banished? The historian Plutarch tells a micro-story that perfectly encapsulates the brutal reality of ancient social rejection. On the day of the voting, an illiterate, uneducated farmer walks up to Aristides, not recognizing his face. The farmer hands his pottery shard to Aristides and asks him to write the name Aristides. Aristides, hiding his shock, asks the farmer, "Has this man ever done you any wrong?" The farmer shakes his head. "No, I don't even know him. But I am absolutely sick and tired of hearing everyone call him the Just." Aristides calmly writes his own name on the shard and hands it back. He is banished shortly after. The farmer did not vote against Aristides because of a crime. He voted against him out of a deep, visceral annoyance. The collective society had grown weary of Aristides' perceived moral superiority. He violated the unspoken norm of democratics, humility. He made them cringe. And so they eradicated him from their society. The ancient Greeks formalized the biological instinct of the hunter-gatherer band and turned it into state law. But for those who suffered the ultimate consequence of this biological alarm system, the reality was far darker than a political exile in Greece. Zoom further back, deep into the Neolithic era, thousands of years before written language. Archaeologists digging in the peat bogs of northern Europe or the chalky soil of early farming settlements occasionally uncover what they call deviant burials. Most of the dead in these ancient communities are buried with care. They are laid on their sides, curled into a fetal position, facing the rising sun, adorned with beads, tools, and the remnants of woven garments. They are surrounded by the protective embrace of their ancestors. But then the excavators find the outcast. You are looking down into a pit at the very edge of the settlement boundary, far from the communal burial ground. The skeleton lying at the bottom was not placed with care. It was thrown. The body is face down, pressed into the dirt. Its hands and feet are bound with cords that have long since rotted away. Massive, heavy stones have been piled onto the back of the neck, the spine, and the pelvis. This person was not a victim of a foreign raid. Isotope analysis of their teeth proves they grew up drinking the water from the local river. They were born here. They were raised here. But somewhere along the line, they violated the norms of the community so severely, so persistently, that the tribe could no longer tolerate their existence. Perhaps they were a thief. Perhaps they were a violent braggart. Or perhaps they simply lacked the social intelligence to read the room, repeatedly failing to understand the complex, unspoken rules of their agricultural neighbors. They induced a collective cringe so severe that the community turned on them. The face-down burial is a universal human symbol of ultimate social rejection. It denies the dead the ability to see the sun. The heavy stones ensure they cannot rise to haunt the living. This is not just an execution, it is a biological erasure. The tribe is violently cutting out a corrupted cell to save the organism. When you look at the crushed spine of a deviant burial, you are looking at the fossilized remains of ancient social shame. You are looking at the terminal consequence of failing to fit in. And this is the ghost that still haunts the architecture of your modern mind. You live in an era of unprecedented physical safety. You have climate control, antibiotics, and a steady supply of calories delivered directly to your door. You are not going to be cast out onto the freezing steppe. You are not going to be buried face down under a pile of rocks. But your brain does not know that. Your brain is still sitting around that flickering hearth fire 25,000 years ago. The genetic code that governs your neurochemistry has not received the software update that civilization happened. This is why, when you are lying in a perfectly safe, warm bed at 3 in the morning, your eyes suddenly snap open. Your heart rate spikes. A cold sweat breaks out on your forehead. Your stomach knots. You are paralyzed by the sudden, intrusive memory of a minor social faux pas you made at a party 5 years ago. You remember waving enthusiastically at a stranger who was actually waving to the person standing directly behind you. In the grand scheme of modern life, this memory is utterly meaningless. It threatens absolutely nothing. But to the ancient, paranoid, survival-obsessed machinery of your anterior cingulate cortex, that memory is a catastrophic threat. Your brain is reviewing the tape of your life, scanning for vulnerabilities, and it hits upon that moment of extreme awkwardness. It sounds the alarm. It pumps cortisol into your bloodstream. It makes you physically wince, curling into a ball under the blankets, trying to shrink your physical footprint just like your ancestor did in the cave. Your biology is screaming at you. You are weird. You violated the norm. They are going to kick us out. We are going to freeze to death. We built cities of glass and steel. We split the atom. We conquered the diseases that stalked our ancestors in the mud. We stopped fighting the apex predators, and we stopped running from the cold. But we never stopped fighting the oldest enemy of all, ourselves. Every time you feel the hot, agonizing flush of cringe, you are feeling the exact same evolutionary tether that kept humanity from splintering into chaos in the darkest days of the Ice Age. It is the price we pay for empathy. It is the tax we pay for survival. We survived because we cared deeply and terribly about what other people thought of us, and we will carry that ancient, humiliating burden in our bones until the end of human time.